This time of year, I find myself reminiscing a lot about warm weather, and it always brings me back to my summer vacations. This last summer vacation I spent in Austria and Croatia. For an entire month, I got to see sights with my husband. We walked the streets that Marie Antoinette walked. We got to go to the world's first zoo. All the things that I had read about and heard about in my history books came to life, and I find myself now wishing that I were back. We are in a spot where when they were digging to build some of the new subways and roads and stuff, they dug up these Roman ruins, and some of them are older than others. They're layered, and so I'm going to walk through this really quick, but they were able to talk the government into letting them keep this one spot walled off. So right here, as you look down, there's an old Roman foundation. And then as you walk along, I'm trying to keep it here, there's some Roman roads, it says. This is in German, but it says in 1990-91, during some excavations they were doing, they found these. So this right here says that it was a street in the 1st to the 5th century. But then as you go over here, this Roman house with murals and underfloor heating was the 2nd to the 4th century. I have been looking for murals and I don't see any, but the heating system are the rocks down there. That back there is actually a canal that was from the 19th century. So that's a bit newer. And then right here is the 10th to the 18th century was a wall. Imperial Gardens, for the Imperial Gardens. Oh man, I hope I'm not making you guys dizzy. I'm trying to not run into people. And this last one is the Roman walls, the 1st to the 5th century.
It's recording.
This is the front of Schönbrunn, and this is the palace. We'll go to the back also, but this is the palace where Maria Theresa mostly, others have lived here, but Maria Theresa with her 16 children, this was their summer palace. It has 1,400 rooms, over 1,400 rooms, and if you look over here, there's other buildings where there's a carriage house. Now it's a cafe and stuff, but then if you go over here to the entrance, these pillars with the people on top, Napoleon put those up when Napoleon took over the castle, when he kind of was conquering places, and they kept those for him. And then again on this side, there's more on this side, but these are just the outer buildings. Like I said, carriage houses, servants' quarters, but right here is the front entrance to Schönbrunn, and the palace that they lived in the summer. Okay guys, as we're walking to get some lunch and cake, let me just tell you a little bit more. This is the back, there's the staircase. One more. If you go on a tour through there, you'll see that staircase is connected to a type of ballroom in the Hall of Mirrors, which was where they would have their dances, and then you could come out onto the stairway to get out. But we're not allowed to video when we go on tours in there. I've been in there twice, but that room has a hallway of mirrors, and it's pretty cool. And here's the gardens. Over here is more private gardens, and then if you go through some of that, there's like Roman statues, there's a couple of little water features, and then there's this huge water, like a fountain right here, and then the Gloriette up at the top. Over here, there's a bunch more ways to walk with the the arches that keep the landscapers busy, I'm imagining. These statues here. There's actually a kids playground. You have to pay a couple euros to go in, but there's a kids playground and a maze made out of shrubs. That's pretty fun. If you look at these gardens right here, you've got the flowers and the shapes. They're made into designs, and then someone has to mow the lawn. And let's see, through the trees is the zoo that basically Maria Teresa did for her kids, since she had 16 of them. And it's one of Europe's first zoos. So you kind of got to have an idea of how large this place is. But it was actually designed to be much larger. They wanted it to be as big as Versailles, but then they decided to not make it quite as big. Okay, here we are at Schönbrunn. It's up higher, and go around. This is the Gloriette. It used to be a hunting lodge for the Habsburgs. Now it's just a good place to have cake and ice cream. Okay guys, not gonna lie, this is the zoo. I've never been in the zoo before in the times I've been here, but this is the Schönbrunn Zoo, the oldest zoo in Austria. I don't know that it looked like this in the 1700s, but there are hippos, giraffes, rhinoceros, and places to eat. The whole thing looks about like this. It matches Schönbrunn, and it was well worth the money for how cool this zoo is. Plus, I have a nut roll that I got from the corner bakery. Also very good to have at the zoo. Okay, here we are at the Otto Wagner Church. It's in the mountains outside of Vienna, and it was built for the psychiatric ward in 1904. Franz Ferdinand was the Archduke who commissioned this church, and him and Otto Wagner did not see eye to eye, and his architecture was new and they didn't like it as much. But let me walk around and I'll show you what it looks like. Here's part of it. It's more plain than what they were used to. We can't go inside because of COVID, but let me get close to the windows. Here's the stained glass windows. There's some of them. There's fences around because it's been closed because of COVID. It's hard for me to zoom out, but let me get as much as I can. Up there's the top. This church was built for the patients in the psychiatric hospital. And after this, Otto Wagner was also able to build other things around Vienna. The U6, which is one of the subway lines, a lot of buildings through there. And here's some of the dirt. And he was also hired to teach at a university in Vienna. They were hoping that he would teach more of the design that they liked, but he kept teaching his designs. And this is up, like I said, higher outside of Vienna because they weren't sure they wanted his church and his designs in Vienna, which is more 1800-ish style. But this is Otto Wagner, part of his designs. We might be able to get more later. Hey guys, this is one of my other favorite places. This is the Hofburg, and it's where the royal family lived in the winter, and the royal palaces are here. You can go on a tour of them, and also now is like the national library, and this is where the president works. But since the 1200s, this has been where the royal family has lived. So I'm going to turn it around and we'll kind of walk through some of the buildings here. As you look there's a statue, and that's a statue of Franz Joseph. And behind that, the tall tower, I'll be getting closer to that maybe later, is the Rathaus, which is the city hall. For the next 2 months, there's a film festival in front of that where you go in, there's food from all over the world there. You can buy food and then you just sit down. There's a big screen in front of it, and they have different movies every night. One of the nights we're going to head there. Here's some of the buildings. The ones with the towers, the matching domes right there, are museums. One's art and one's natural science, I believe. I haven't gone in those yet. But here's the entire Hofburg with the royal apartments. You can go in if you pay. I've been in there before. You just can't video anything. But here's the main part. Behind this, I'll try to get in a minute, is where the Roman ruins are that you can see. And like I said, a lot of construction. My friend explained to me that they're not really allowed to tear buildings down unless the entire place decides to, but here they would never do that. But what you can see is just the different styles of architecture depending on when it was built. And so anyway, I'll just go one more time around where you can see the gold. That gold means that it was used for royalty on top of there. This statue is Eugene of Savoy, and I'll go to his house in a little while, but they put a statue of him in front of here because of the fight, the colonel that he was to help against the wars. And like I said, different architecture depending on the years that it was built. Okay, so here we are in the Burg Garden, which is one of the sides of the Hofburg, and they have this where people walk around and, whoa, let me turn it around, that was my face. This is a butterfly place where you can pay, go in and see the butterflies. Let's see, a lot of people out having lunch. There's some statues in here, one of Mozart, one of Franz Joseph. Hopefully I'm not making these like. Also a lot of people just sitting under the trees, and that's what we came here for. Käsekreiner. Yeah, it's a really good hot dog. And just some Almdudler to drink, but it's really one of our favorite places to go. And just again, Burg Garden, just in the back. So here we start in the middle. This church is the center, and this whole area right here is the first area. Vienna's broken up into sections. This is the first section, and it goes down many. So here's the first section, and when you see maps of Vienna from even the 1100s, this was the center. There used to be walls built around this area to protect them from the Turks and from everyone, and then after they realized that they needed to get bigger, in 1700s they made the wall bigger. But right here is the center of everything, and if you look at a map, that's why everything goes around this square right here. This is some of the organist. Okay, here we are in Augarten, and again, some historical significance, but the one thing I wanted to get was this is a World War II bunker. There's one other one over in those trees over there, but it's the only two things that they let stay standing from World War II. They don't want to remember this part of history very much, so this is one of the bunkers, and the other bunker, like I said, is over through those trees. This park was turned into a park for the people, and it used to be a hunting ground in the 1600s, and through these trees there's a wall standing still, and then there's an old porcelain factory. It's the second oldest in Europe, but they've built this park for people. It's kind of on the outskirts of Vienna, but people have kind of started coming out this way, and there are still apartments around, but this is just another park for people to walk around and relax in now. Okay, here in the Augarten, this building is the second oldest porcelain factory in Europe, and there's a palace over behind those trees, and then this right here is just part of one of the other homes that people have lived in, but this is the rest of the Augarten, along with, just as you enter through there, the part with the bunker. And they also used it not just for a bunker, but they used it to store garbage during World War II. And they also, the website says that they also had common graves there for war victims in there too. This is Prater. It's a park, and now it's almost like a lagoon, except it's free to get in. You just have to pay for each ride that you want to go on, or if you want to go into the museum. Food. This park is huge. In the 1500s, it was a hunting area, and then in 1766, Emperor Joseph II decided that this should be public for everyone, and they still hunted on it. There's land behind here that they still hunted on until 1920, and of course it did have some of the stuff that happened in World War II. It was kind of destroyed, but they've always made sure that at least this Ferris wheel has been going for a very long time, and it goes slow, and I actually videoed some of our ride on that. It costs about 12 euros to ride on it, but you get great views of the city. So anyway, as the years have gone on, even in the 20 years that I've been coming here, more and more rides are being added, and different exhibits, but lots of food, lots of fun. Okay guys, we are at the, in my mind, the mother of all farmers markets. This is Zagreb in Croatia, and this market happens every day. About 50,000 visitors or people come and shop there. Behind there's the main cathedral, which in the earthquake last year, one of the towers fell, so they're fixing everything. But this is Deluxe Market, and like I said, every day, and it's been going on for about 100 years. But this is where people come to buy everything. Okay, so we're up at the Old Town part, and I will video that in a minute. But from this Old Town part of Zagreb, here's a look over the rest of Zagreb, and a lot of reconstruction because of the earthquake. They're fixing some of the towers, some of the buildings that have cracks in them. There's not a lot here. Maybe back in the background you can see some, but until the 1990s, Zagreb was actually part of Yugoslavia, which we don't have anymore. But it was communist, and then they had a civil war in the 90s, and now they're trying out the democracy thing. And in just a minute, at noon every day, a cannon goes off in this tower. So we're here with 5 minutes left until it goes off right here. Okay, this area right here this is one of the original stone gates that led into the old city called Grodet, and it was redone in 1760s, what that plaque up there says. So this is, like I said, one of the original stone gates from the 13th century, and inside here is a shrine to the Virgin Mary, because there was a fire here in this area, and the only thing that survived was the statue of the Virgin Mary that's in there. So now there's a lot of people that go in there, and it's like a little chapel inside of it where you light a candle. And as you go through to the other side is where you get to the old town, the old part of Zagreb where the church is and the government buildings. Okay, here we are in the main square in Zagreb. The lady feeding all of the dumb pigeons. This square has been around for a while. They used to use it as the market that I videoed earlier, but then they moved it. So now it's just a main square. It's called Banjelic, I think is how you say his last name, with the C's, with the accents and stuff above it. But he was the governor of Croatia in the 1800s, and they have this statue. They did remove it for a while when it was Yugoslavia and the communism, but then in 1991 they put the statue back up. 1990, 1991. The buildings behind here are from the 1800s, and like I said, it's just the main square right there is where you go up to the market now, and just a very busy walkway. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, but sometimes you can see little differences in the way they were upkept or not upkept. Okay, so here we are in Zagreb again, and this street right here, as it goes along down here, is called Bloody Bridge, basically translated as Bloody Bridge. And it used to be the bridge that was the two sections. This side was Gradic, and this side up here was Capital, which was the religious part, and this part here was for the tradesmen. And the bridge connected the two, but it was a creek, and they used to fight over the water. And it's called Bloody Bridge now because in the 14th century there was a huge battle here between the two cities because of the water, and they said that it was so bloody that all the water was red. So now it's called Bloody Bridge, even though now it's covered over. They still have the history here, and if you look at the sign, the name of it underneath it says Gradic and Capitola, which are the two cities that it separated.
Okay, so they're standing on the Congress Plaza Square on the west entrance in a big grand park in Chicago. There are two of them.
Okay, so now in Zagreb, this is their National Theater. Right here is their National Theater. And then over here is like an art school for performing arts. We're at Berg Kreinstein, and this is not an old castle in European terms because it was built in the 1800s. That the guy who built it used the old foundations or whatever he could from a castle that was here in the 1300s, and he just built what he could, used objects from older places, brought things in. So really the person who lived here in the 1800s. Now it's a museum. It's 24 euros for both of us to get in, but the tour is only in German and you can't video anything inside. But for us, this would be a pretty cool thing. Europeans, it's not old enough. So as we walk around, I will try to get some more video of it so you can see how big this is. There's also a bird sanctuary here, so if you hear birds, it's from the bird sanctuary. But here's parts of the castle. We're going to mostly get the outside since we don't have 24 euros and we don't speak German well enough to take the tour inside. Gonna walk back the other way? I think we'll go the other way. Okay, here we are in Gottweid Abbey, and it was started in 1083, but because of a fire, this is pretty much all built in the 1700s, was rebuilt. This is the church that we're looking at right here. The rest around are the living quarters. There's places where you can go in and see some of the rooms. But really this was just a Baroque style monastery that is up on a hill. It's a beautiful view. Hi guys, so now we're in Dürnstein, and that's the city down there that you can see in the church right by the Danube River. There's out there a lot of vineyards, and in the fall, if you come here in the fall, everyone is selling their wine that they've made with all of them. Also, the other thing they grow a lot here are apricots, so you can get apricot jam, apricot wine, things like that. So all the mountains where you can see are vineyards, and we're on our way up to the castle, and once we get there I'll talk about what that castle had going on at the time. It's just ruins right now, but we'll be able to talk about it. Okay, so now we're at the top of the mountain, and this is this castle, and legend has it that this castle was the castle that was used for, am I talking about him? That was used for King Richard the Lionheart when he was coming back from the Crusades. He had made the Austrian king mad, and he was trying to sneak home, and he was found out here, and they imprisoned him here on his way back. And at the time, Vienna needed more money to build an outer wall, and they figured that the way they could get the money was to use him as a ransom. So when England paid the money to release him, then they used that money to build an outer wall to protect them from tribes or the Ottoman Empire. So this right here, even though it's a crumbled castle, at one time it was a castle.
Okay.
There we go. So here we are at Milk, and it's an old medieval town, and we're looking over the town of Milk. Down below, it's got some cute stores, nice restaurants. It's some cute old town. They've rebuilt some of it just because of fires, but over here is the Abbey, and this Abbey has been around for thousands of years, but it's been rebuilt because there was a devastating fire. So the wall says it was rebuilt in the 1700s, which explains the Baroque look to it. But we're driving along the Danube, and we're just stopping around little towns along the Danube River. Okay guys, we're in Germany, and we're gonna go up to the top of that mountain up there. You can't see it very well, but when we get up there, I'll video that. Is the Eagle's Nest, one of Hitler's homes. It's up there. He rarely lived there because he was afraid of heights. So just wanted to video this cute little town. There are paintings on the walls, and I'm going to include some pictures on the buildings because they couldn't write, so they painted on the walls the things that happened here. And so it's called Berchtesgaden, where we're at right now in Germany. Okay, still in Germany. Here we are at the top of the Eagle's Nest, Hitler's home. It was for his 50th birthday, and he actually hated being here because he's claustrophobic, and we had to take an elevator. And he was also afraid of heights. But here we are. It's my favorite view. Over here is Salzburg, so that's Austria, and then over here is where the house is, and we're gonna walk through the house. That's just where that house is where he made a lot of important decisions about concentration camps, war tactics. Inside there's a marble fireplace that was a gift from Mussolini. So yeah. Okay, so now I'm sitting here staring at this house, and the historical impact of this, I guess, is why I like history so much and traveling around, because you can hear about it in books, or you can come and see it. And the decisions that were made right here affected millions of lives. Down below, his officers' homes were down below, and when they came and bombed this area, they totaled the houses below and didn't want a lot of reminders, but they kept this here. And you think about how close we're in Germany, but right over, like I said, right over there is Austria, and geographically speaking, so close that's what Hitler wanted. He wanted Austria. And so as he sat here, he could look over and figure out what he could do to take over Austria. And I think that's why when you learn about history, it's important, because if you didn't know this, then this would just be a house in a mountain. Okay, so here we are. Where we actually ended up on a Sound of Music tour, not on purpose, but because we wanted to go to Hallstatt, which is a salt mining town. It's beautiful, but I thought that I would throw this in since we're here. This gazebo they used to film the song You Are 16 Going on 17 in the movie The Sound of Music, and it's been moved a couple of times because where it was originally is now a hotel, and too many people were coming, so now it's here, but now it's locked because they've had too many people people fall and get hurt as they were jumping from bench to bench. So now I'm going to walk a little bit. It'll be good. Because we're actually at Heldrun Palace. Here's the palace, also used in The Sound of Music for part of the Von Trapp family home. But our tour guide also told me that as far as culture and goes, that this whole thing for Christmas is one big Christmas market. I had to think of the word. One big Christmas market, and the walls are lined with they're wooden built gingerbread looking homes that each person sits in to sell whatever they want for the Christmas market. And the windows on the palace, actually there's no cars coming, the windows on the palace are each numbered as like an advent calendar. So she said we should come back in the winter sometime and experience the Christmas markets.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, so here we are on Lake Hallstatt, and we have rented a boat for a half an hour just so we could go out on the lake and look around. The mountains look huge when we're out driving around here, very, very tall, but the fact of the matter is that we live higher above sea level. So if we were to go up to the top of this mountain, we'd be about where we are at sea level wise. So right here behind us is Hallstatt, the city, and it's built up on this mountainside, and for 4,000 years they've been mining salt here. And up until 1960 there was no road, so the only way you could get here was by a boat. Take the boat to the end of the lake and then take a train or something. In the 1960s they decided that they needed something, so they built a small road so you could take horses, and then they decided to make it bigger, and so now it has a lot of tourists now that you can finally get here. An interesting fact is that there have been Chinese here that have made an exact replica of this city in China. So sometimes the Chinese people come here because they want to see the real thing, because they've gone to the one in China. But yeah, there's still a salt mine here, and we're not very far from Salzburg. This whole area is very rich in salt. So the salt ran their economy for a very long time, and now there's only one business that mines the salt and gets the salt all over where it needs to go. So yeah, this is Hallstatt. Okay, so now here we are. This is this back part of Salzburg, and this is the place where they filmed part of The Sound of Music. This is the helm that they used, and this is the pond, and in the back you can see the fortress, which we will be going to tomorrow. Hey guys, so here we are in Salzburg, and we're up at the top. This is the fortress. Over 1,000 years old. It was built for the ruler at the time to protect himself, quite honestly, from the people because they didn't like him. But we have a ticket to go through a lot of the fortress, so we'll go inside and you'll be able to see what the inside of a fortress looks like. There's museums in there. Also, at one time there was actually a school inside. I don't know if there still is, but when I was here a couple of years ago, they said there was a school. So as I go through Salzburg, I'll try to talk about some of the history. Yesterday and the day before, we went through some of the outskirts of Salzburg, like the salt mine, Hallstatt. Those were all important for this area because salt was what made this city so rich, and rich in the terms of 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. Churches, religion, and how many churches. So as I video Salzburg, I want you to count how many churches you see, just to see how rich this city used to be, and it was all from the salt. Okay, now we've made it to pretty much the oldest part of Vienna. This is where the Roman settlements were. As you can see, a lot of it has been torn down because it doesn't look like Roman architecture. But this church right here, let's see if I can get all of it. We're pretty close and can't back up. It's pretty crowded here. But this church is right now what they think is the oldest church in Vienna. It was completed in 740 AD. And it's St. Ruperic's church, and St. Ruperic was the saint of salt. So this church, because the church was also the government at this time, helped oversee the salt, transporting it up and down the Danube. So this is one of the only things left. There's a couple of Roman walls and some other Roman ruins, but this church is the only part here that's still standing. Okay, so Judenplatz. This is where the Jews had set up a settlement between, like in the 1400s. This was where they had a church. The building over here, when we come over here, you can kind of see the one with the blessed decorations out there. The one in the middle there is now a museum, and they've uncovered some art. There have been some archaeology digs there in the museum inside. You can see some of the foundations from an old church and stuff. And right here in the middle, this was put here in 2000 in commemoration of I think the statue says 65,000 Austrian Jews who died during the Holocaust. It's kind of made like a library of books, but the books are facing the outside way, so you can see the pages of the book, and everyone represents someone who died in World War II from the concentration camps, the Austrian Jews. And then over here is a statue right here of Lessing. He was a poet in the 1700s who was here in Vienna. They put up a statue for him in the 1935, and then during World War II, the National Socialist Party tore it down and melted it down to build weapons for the war. So now they put this one back up, and they put this one back up in 1965. And so this whole square was a Jewish center for hundreds of years. Okay, so this is Vienna. It's a city with 2 million people, and for a visitor it seems pretty fascinating. It's got traffic jams at 5 o'clock. People live and work here. It's the capital of Austria, so the president of the country lives and works here. And in order to appreciate Vienna, you more need to know the history. So you could come and do the normal European thing, which is to stay here for 2 days, run from place to place. In order to really appreciate it, maybe spend some more time here, you need to know some history about what the buildings are, why the people are the way they are. The first time Austria is mentioned in any type of written language is in 996. Now, Vienna is as far as settlements go, is older than that, but the name Austria was mentioned in 996. So in 1996, Austria, the country, celebrated its millennial anniversary, and before then there were Roman settlements and stuff like that, but it wasn't called Austria. Because of Vienna's location on the Danube River, the river goes from east to west, and it's one of the only rivers that does that in Europe, so people used it as a trade route. So this particular spot was very important to the traders as people were coming and going from place to place. So it was fought over quite a bit, so it has quite a bit of history between the Turks and Romans, Germans, all of these different countries that wanted this spot.
this is Belvedere, and it's the Schloss. It's like a palace, and Prince Eugene of Savoy had this palace built for him. This is also Baroque because most of Vienna, the growth was going on during the Baroque period when they finally defeated the Ottomans and felt like it was safe to make Vienna bigger. So a lot of the building, the reason why a lot of it is Baroque looking is because that's the time period that they finally felt like they could, that the Turk threat was gone. So this is now a museum, art museum, but it used to be the house for Prince Eugene of Savoy.
Okay, so this is the statue of Maria Theresa, and she was born in 1717, and she was the only woman to rule during the Habsburg dynasty. During the first part of her reign, she spent most of the time defending her position as ruler, and then after that they had about 10 years of wars, and after those were over and she'd lost a little bit of her lands, she was able to concentrate on domestic affairs. Her biggest one was education for everyone instead of just the upper class. So during her reign, she built 500 schools, and two of them, one built in 1746 and 1751, are still being used as schools. The other thing that she did very well was pick her advisors. And as you can see from the statue, she's on the top, and her advisors that she used to help her are surrounding her. And she also was very popular with the people because she went from the Baroque to the Enlightenment period, and the Baroque period was more like the upper class. And
You're fine.
the Baroque was more like the upper class, the kings, and then the Enlightenment was when she started realizing that if she had more educated people, they would be better, so an educated society was better. And she was a very devoted wife to her husband, and she had 16 children, and I've gone through and kind of seen quite a bit of what she's done, especially Schönbrunn is my favorite, but Maria Theresa is one of my favorite people.
I don't know, your face is shaded.
Okay. Okay, so I'm ending, we're getting ready to go home. This is the end. We're in the Volksgarten, which is the garden for the people, and I thought it would be a good place to end this. I hope that it's helped you understand that learning history helps you understand the culture, helps you understand where they came from. If you don't learn the history, every building or every place in Europe will just be a bunch of old buildings. But as you go through, you can see the significance of each building, of each area, why things are the way they are, maybe understand the government more, understand social classes, understand everything about it, so it helps you appreciate where you are instead of just walking around looking at a bunch of old buildings. Okay, here's the shower room. This is where they came in after they had shaved their heads and taken all of their clothes. As you can see, lots of pipes up above to get as many people in as they could. And here's where they just had them shower. Okay, so here's on this side, kitchen, laundry, infirmary. This right here is where roll call was done a couple times a day, where they would stand for hours. And over here were all the barracks where the prisoners lived. Okay, so this would be like a living area where the beds would have been. Two to a bed. This whole barrack was meant to house 300 people, but by the end of the war it was so overcrowded that about 2,000 people would be housed in one of these buildings.